Good morning. It's Tony Dottino here doing my live with Tony. We just finished this past weekend our 25th qualifying event, and we're now in the move of getting things set for the actual live event at Fullsail University on September 28th in Winter Park, Florida. So congratulations to those that have made our qualifying event, and we do have a couple of alternates that may eventually be pulled up and be a part of it. But we are working on the long-term memory events, so that's one of the things that we're starting to work on now, and what categories and what the differentiation. So Karen Pinson, who is the executive that runs all these programs and puts games together, and I spent a couple of hours yesterday looking at different categories and what the elements would be and how we would be consistent about that, and making sure from each of the data elements that we have, it includes numbers, it includes lists, it includes names, not names of people, but names of different elements of where things are and where they may be located. So we're working on that now, and within a month's time, we'll be getting that out to the mental athletes. What we do is by the end of August, they'll be getting about 500-600 pieces of information that they'll have to put into long-term memory. But the important thing is how we form the questions and how we put the questions to each of the data elements that we have. So that's what we're working on now. That's the current status of it. But what I wanted to talk about today is what we call the LOCI method. It's a location method of realizing that our memories work by how we associate information in our brain, and then we look to connect and link it with new information that we're trying to either learn or retain or remember or create from. And so it's the natural, I always think of it as the roots of a tree. If you think of the roots of the tree and how they spread out, if any of you have ever seen sidewalks popped up at the roots of a tree or a driveway pop up, your brain is like that in terms of the roots of your brain are extending itself out. All these little tiny little things that you can't imagine fit inside that generate these trillions of thoughts. We'll leave it at billions of thoughts that we can have. And it's through this network of these fibers that we have, of these neurons and axons, that we retain and connect and associate new information to existing information to create new knowledge and new retention of things we want to remember. So when you want to remember something, like a list of words or the sequence of a deck of cards, or anything that you're trying to put into an order of retention, what you realize, if you realize that you've got this network and this database of things that you can put into your brain that you'll remember at a spontaneous level, we call that an anchor. Meaning we're going to have things in our mind that are so clear to us that if we were to close our eyes, we'd easily pick up and remember it. And we use the LOCI method, location, and we say, if you were to walk around in one of your favorite rooms within your house, it could be any room in your house, and by the way, you can use multiple rooms as you get good at the skill, but if you were to walk around a room in your house and look for things that are against the wall, that would not move. They'd be permanent. So we call them anchors. They're going to be staying there. So for example, in this room, if I wanted to have an anchor and I saw myself just walking around this room and looking out this window that looked out at this tree, that could be an anchor that if I close my eyes, my goodness, I can see that tree sitting out there and I can see the shade in the window. I could actually use the tree outside as an anchor. I could use the shade as a second anchor and the bottom panel as a third. So if I close my eyes, my loci says, okay, my location of the tree, the shade, and the pane, that's 3 anchors that I have. Now, what do I do with those anchors? Well, I want to associate and link and connect. So remember, right, our brain is going to associate, link, and connect new information to that which is already anchored. So if I want to remember the word book, all right, I think about a book, and I say, oh my goodness, I look out the window and that tree has my book hanging off it. How did it get there? So when I look at the branch of the tree that I just see outside my window, I see the word book. Now I come into sequence number 2. Now again, sequence is important, so the tree is number 1, the shade is number 2, the pane of the window behind me is number 3. So the sequencing of my anchors is crucial. So now I turn around and I want to remember pillow. So I got a book sitting out on the tree. Now I want to remember the word pillow. And so I look at this shade and I imagine, gee, you know what? That shade just almost looks like the pillow that I sleep on. If I just turn it around and drop it down on my bed, I think I've got my pillow on the shade. Wow, I'll lift the pillow off the shade and there I go with my second word. What's my first word? Book. My second word, when I look at this, I connected and associated, is pillow. Now, we go to the third anchor, which is the pane, and I think of the word, an abstract word. We'll take an abstract, like thing. Like thing? What image or picture do I get? The word is thing. I want you to remember the word thing. And you say, well, now I've got a window pane, and I've got to link and connect to the word thing. And I say, oh my goodness, I see a thing on the window pane that I don't recognize. I don't know what that thing is. So I can't identify it properly, so it's a thing. Now, let's go through my word list. What's on my tree? A book. What's on my shade? A pillow. And what's on the pane or the glass pane? I don't know. It's a thing I don't recognize. And so around the room I can go in my bedroom here, and I can now go to, if I do this well, I have a couple of closet doors. So I can look at the closet doors, and I use the first closet door as anchor number 4, the second closet door as anchor number 5, and then I can go out to that window there, and I see, whoops, I see a fir tree out there, so I can use the fir tree and another shade in the window, but now I have spaced that window differently than the one that's right behind me. So if I go through my room here, now I have anchor tree, shade, window, closet door number 4, closet door number 5. I have another tree, a fir tree sitting out there as number 6. I have another shade number 7, and I have another pane that's got a screen in it as number 8. And so if I close my eyes, I just close my eyes and say, I got it. Tree, shade, pane, closet, closet, fir tree, shade, window, pane with a screen. I now have my 8 anchors certainly locked in my head, and I can now link 8 different objects to those anchors. And that's what we call the LOCI method. It's locating things in your brain that are solid, they're in there, you can retain them and recall them, and sometimes they call this the journey method. People have the way of calling it the journey, meaning I'm taking a journey and I'm walking about. It can be outside. You can walk out your house and start looking at your neighbor's house and the distinguishing features. But what you're doing is you're creating a visual image of something that you're going to lock in and say 1, 2, 3, 4, up to as many things as you want to remember. And you're going to sequence them in the same order every time. And so I always have to remember tree, shade, pane, closet door, fir tree, shade, pane with the screen. And so that always has to stay from 1 to 8 so that my anchors give me sequence, they give me something to latch onto, and I can now add additional words to my additional 5 anchors that I've demonstrated for you today. Now, journey, I walk out the door, I look to the right, there's a group of hedges. Now I can cut the hedges into 3 sections, but you know what, I'll use the hedges. I walk down to the bottom of the driveway, and I look to the left, and I see a mailbox sitting down on our neighbors, so that could be anchor number 2. I go to the third, and there's this big tree. As long as the winds don't knock it over, this big, huge 100-year-old tree would be anchor number 3. And I just would walk down the street, and I would just anchor in a clockwise position the things that I see as I'm walking about in my journey. Of course, when I get to the corner, I come around and walk on the other side of the tree. And depending upon how many anchors I need would dictate how far I'm going to walk. And so it's, again, the very simple principle. Our brains associate, link, and connect things that we already know to new things that we're trying to retain and remember. And then we go through a cycle of creating these little hookups, these little connections and associations to the things we already know. And when we see the thing we know, I got a book sitting out on the tree, I got a pillow sitting up in here, and I got something on the pane, helps us to then pick up, by looking at the anchor, what the association and link and the connection was. That's a brief description of the LOCI method, and I hope that helps any of you that have wondered, what is this LOCI journey method that we use? Roman room is what it's referred to, because the Romans were the ones that started the method of retention and how to use it. I hope it provides some basis of learning how you too can remember things that are important to you. Have a good week. It's Wednesday. We're at the middle of the week. We got a couple more days before we get to the weekend. And hope all is well and everyone's being safe and smart and avoiding some of the storms and weather hazards that are coming up across our country.